So that's what's been really good about this camp is seeing all that growth that we had from last year.
Against an opponent that you're going to be a heavy favorite against, I mean, what do you have to see on Saturday to say, yeah, this offense is where we need to be in this one?
I don't really look into all that favorite stuff. Coming from FCS, man. When I was at Western Carolina, we were up, on Georgia Tech in 22. Last year, Western Carolina, where my dad was at, was beating NC State all the way to the last, I think, 4 or 5 minutes of the game. For us, man, I just want to see us play hard, right? Like, you can't take anybody lightly. Everybody has good players. I think they're a veteran team that has a lot of guys on defense that's played a lot of football. And for us, man, I want to see us come out and just play hard. Like that's who we want to be. We want to play really, really hard. I want to see us be efficient, and I just want to see us play good football. I don't want to see sloppy stuff like penalties and turnovers, right? I want to see us take care of the football. I want to see us gain positive plays every play. And if we can play positive football, I really believe anytime we're moving the ball and we're not going backwards, we're a pretty balanced offense, and that's when we're really good.
How was Eli's camp?
I thought Eli was good, man. I think, from where he was in spring after the injury to where he is now, he made a big jump, Obviously, he's taking care of his body, right? He's back in, really good shape. He's just back confident with the injury that he had. And I think from, beginning of camp to where he is now, I really think the last week and a half, he's kind of went to another step. So, I'm comfortable where he's at, obviously him having experience, right, from last year. He just hasn't played a game in a long time, like a true game, So, the good thing is we have our game plan in now for this week. We've had in for about 2 weeks now. Obviously, we worked on some of it over summer. So, I think he's really comfortable with what we're doing offensively with the game plan. And he's a game plan guy. He loves things structured and game plan. Camp is kind of, you're installing so much stuff, You're trying to get really the whole playbook in to get ready for the season. And so now we're in the game plan where it's like, okay, this is exactly what we're trying to get and what we're trying to get accomplished. So, I like where he's at right now.
What's different about this offense from year 1 to year 2? Not just players understanding it, but what have you tweaked about the scheme?
Yeah, I think it's, when it comes down to it, right, once you kind of, earn some respect when it comes to the way we throw it, I think, we had a lot of success early in the season throwing the football down the field. And as an offense right now, you got to be able to do other things really well, right? Whether it's, we got to be able to run the football when teams take away the passing game, right? We got to be able to get the ball in space. Our screen game's got to be better this year, blocking on the perimeter, right? And some of it has to do with, creating depth, right? Can you be 2 deep at every position, 2 or 3 deep instead of being 1 deep, right? Because you're going to have injuries, just the way it is, right? So I think we've done that, and then getting guys that fit. When you come into a new place and it's sort of totally opposite. I mean, to me, you're talking about totally you got this end of the spectrum where Pitt was at offensively, the type of offense it was, and then where we are, where we're more of a new version of the NFL, where we're more tempo and kind of out in space NFL passing game, where you got to be able to run a bunch of routes. Schematically, we want guys that can run their whole route tree, that can separate and do things with the ball in space. So, now getting those guys in here, not trying to, we only got a couple guys that can do those things like we had last year. Now we got, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys that can do the same things. Makes sense? So you're not having to, do as much different stuff to try to play to their strengths. So, we got a lot more guys that we can kind of, put in there and rotate in, which I think is going to be good for us.
Okay, speaking of depth, obviously you have Dez and Joel's in the running back spot, but after that you're pretty banged up with injuries. Is there any concern there about depth at that spot?
Not really. I think obviously with the two freshmen out, that surprised us, because they're really talented. We felt really good about the freshman running back class. And so, I feel good, man. Dez is a workhorse. He's always been one. Goff has had a great camp. I think he's went to another level. He was a freshman last year just trying to learn. He's gained another, I think, 10 or 15 pounds this offseason. So I love where he's at. And I think, behind him, we kind of got, different guys. We obviously, we have, I think Caleb Williams has had a great camp. He's more that bigger downhill running back that we want to have in short yard situation. And then that's why we brought Jalen Williams in here for too, because, for my dad last year, even coming off a knee injury, he scored, I think, 10 touchdowns in the red zone, right, short yardage. And we wanted a guy who could do that, and also he catches it well in the backfield. He caught 30 balls for me in 2022. So he's more that bigger back that's, can run it downhill. But to me, we kind of got different guys, is what I like. They're all a little different. And obviously Boozie's, can be special with his speed. So I feel good as long as, we got to use them the right way, right? Like I believe, we have a ability to play more than just 2 guys in a game. We just got to use them in certain situations, and play their strengths.
In addition to having a lot of the same personnel as last year, just what kind of lessons do you feel like you learned individually just as a play caller that you can translate that will help you into year two, calling the shots offensively?
Yeah, I still think it's way different than it was 3 or 4 years ago. With the portal, man, it's changed college football. And what I mean by that is that, like usually going into spring ball, right? Like you have a bunch of guys back, and even though we do have guys back, we still have a bunch of new guys. And definitely at the skill positions, right? Like you look at guys that played in games last year that are playing this weekend. You're talking about Kenny and Pop are the only ones at receiver that played in games, right? You're talking about running backs. Maybe Goff played a little bit in the season, right? Him and Dez. So even though we do have guys coming back that are kind of main part of our offense, and obviously it helps, but it's still different, right? What I've kind of learned in the last couple of years is that you still have to change the way you install and to change the way you do things because, the quarterbacks and stuff, the guys that are back want to do a lot, right? Like the receivers want more stuff, right? Concept-wise, but then also you have so many new guys that you're just teaching how to line up in your system. That came from different systems that do things different, right? So, I think we do a great job of throwing everything at them like we've done in the spring and summer. We went through 9 installs in the summer for a reason. We didn't go back to the beginning. We went 1 through 9 in the summer. And the reason we did that is so we can have a lot in our back pocket, right? So we can really attack people and put a lot on the kids, and I think they've done a really good job handling that.
What have you seen from Keith and Jeff, and how have those two picked up the tempo?
Yeah, Keith played in a similar type tempo, at where he was at. Obviously, Jeff did it, right? Michigan was huddle, 12, 13 personnel, downhill, which we still want to be a power run game. That's who we want to be. We want to be able to run the ball at people. But, I think they've done a great job. Jeff from spring to where he is now, he's always been a really good run blocker. Like even in spring, he was able to roll his hips. But where he is in the pass game right now, pass pro, I think he's made a huge leap. And obviously we practice a lot, right? We work on, drop back throwing like an NFL team. So he gets a lot of kicks in every day. And then, but those two's played great together, They're both physical. Jeff is, like I said, really long and athletic. And Keith, man, he's got that you're talking about like a Pitt lineman. Like he's your type of Pitt lineman. He's tough, he's nasty, he's got some stuff to him. And he's played a lot of football. The one thing I love about him is that he's played so much football that he understands twists. He understands defensive line, D-lineman, alignment. Like he kind of sometimes understands what's going to happen up front with a blitz or a twist because he just has a lot of experience. So he's just a savvy player. And I think we've done a great job recruiting the 3 or 4 we got in the portal. They're really going to help us, man. I feel like we're a lot deeper this year.
Would you describe Eli as a risk taker as a quarterback?
I think sometimes he is. I think he needs to be. I think he needs to be more aggressive, if that makes sense. Obviously, Desmond Reed's a really good player, right? And obviously, we want to find ways to get that guy the ball as many ways possible. But when teams start trying to take him away and rolling coverage to him and not guarding him with linebackers, which I wouldn't do that if I was them. Now we have to be able to throw the ball down the field, and we got to trust the protection, and we got to trust the plays that we're putting in, and he's got to let it rip, right? And I think he's been doing that this camp this summer. I think he's been more aggressive throwing it down the field. I saw something on the head coach for the Vikings, which I love talking about quarterbacks, but who cares about turn the ball over in camp, right? And what I mean by that is if you don't learn how to on that 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 in practice, or that 2nd down and 5, if you don't work on trying to make that throw in practice, right, and try to make that tough throw to keep a drive alive, or that drive might win you the game in the 4th quarter, that 3rd and 7, right, that you got to make a throw. If you don't practice on trying to make those throws, then you're never going to have confidence to throw them in games. Does that make sense? And so it's my job to coach now what happened to that throw, right? Did you throw that pick because your eyes wasn't there fast enough? Or did you throw that pick because your feet weren't set fast enough, right? Like that's my job to coach the stuff happening to the play. But as long as he's doing those things right, his eyes are in the right area of fear, he's on time and he's not throwing the ball late, and guess what? He forces one because he's trying to make a throw in practice. Hey man, we can learn from that. Does that make sense? So I think those are the things that we're trying to really give him confidence, and I think he's taking and kind of running with it, being more aggressive.
Kate, are those outside guys ready to make plays? Are you seeing that from the receivers?
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny, man. Obviously Kenny's a really good, big body receiver that makes tough catches, right? He knows how to win vertically down the field. Pop's a great route runner, knows what we want, knows how to get open. But then you got those guys to the field that can really run, man. I mean, I'm talking about, you got the Blue Hickses, you got Deuce Spann over there, you got Cam Sapp. They're all really, really fast guys. And it's just been kind of fun this camp, where we were having to move the ball a lot last year, right? Like if we didn't have perfect plays, we kind of struggled moving the ball some versus our defense, right? But what we've seen sometimes this camp is that, man, those guys can create some special plays, right? We create more of those where, we might just throw a hitch out there or a slant, and a guy might go 30. Or we might now we're hitting more post routes or more down the field throws. So, I think when you can stretch people vertically, it opens up everything, whether it's the run game, whether it's the screen game, whether it's the drop back passing game. And I think now we got a group of guys that can really do that consistently, not just one or two guys. Now we got like 3, 4, 5, 6 of them that can do that. And to me, man, no one wants to call 13, 14 plays a drive, right? It's hard to do that. It's hard to do that in the NFL and expect college kids to be able to do that every drive to go 11, 12 plays is tough because you got to play consistent football. So we got to have some drives where, heck yeah, we got to be able to drive the ball and be patient and take what they give us and run the ball and get 12 play drives. But also we need to have a couple of drives where we score really explosive and so I'm excited. That's the mindset of this team, and hopefully we can do that this year.
Yeah, talk more. Naturally, the offensive line takes a lot of responsibility for keeping Eli upright. But
Yeah.
Does he maybe have a responsibility when he scrambles or when he's moving around in the pocket to think about the kind of hits that he's taking?
Oh, 100%. Obviously I love where we're at up front this year. I think where we at in the pass pro in our pocket is so much better than last year. And obviously, just getting a lot of reps with throwing the football. But, I'm very hard on the quarterbacks, right? I played position 4-year starter. My dad played it. We believe that it's the quarterback's job to get rid of the football, right? If we're giving up a lot of sacks, I'll put it on the quarterback. It's just who I am. It's our job to know where our hot's at. It's our job to know how to get out of the pocket and understand when to step up in the pocket and run and when to get out of the pocket and how to get rid of it. And we have to understand our answers to do that. And so, I put a lot on Eli and the quarterbacks that, hey, we have to get rid of the ball. Listen, those guys' jobs are hard, man. It's 5 guys. They're in the trenches. They already got a hard enough job, right? We have to make the O-line's job better. And we got to take ownership of being good at that. And I think the O-line has taken ownership of keeping the quarterbacks upright. And I think the quarterbacks are trying to do a better job of, hey, how fast can I get rid of it and make sure that we're not creating negative plays. Because as long as we're moving the ball forward, we're going to be a pretty good offense.
Dez has said that he wants to do more to help his team win this year. What more can he do after an All-American season?
I think what he means by that is Dez is really hard on himself, right? He's always watching film. He's always trying to find ways to get better. I think for Dez is that he just wants to be even more consistent. He creates some explosive plays. Yeah, he's going to fit you up in the pass program. He's probably one of the best pass pro run blockers you've ever seen, or pass pros at his size. Yeah, he's going to catch out of the backfield. But for him, he just wants to show that every down he's playing super consistent football. And I think that's just his mentality. He almost wants to be perfect. I think that's what he means by that.
How confident are you in that tight end room you have right now, especially how Jake Overman's left this week?
Yeah, I feel good, and the reason why is because obviously we had Gavin, who was an NFL guy last year, right? Who had a lot of ability, and then Jake came in kind of late. He was a transfer, and so he was only here really for a semester with us before the fall. And so, but really we didn't really trust anybody behind him yet. Does that make sense? So we kind of felt we had those 2 guys. I feel good about playing 3 guys right now, even 4 if we have to. Just certain situations, depending on if we want to run the ball or throw the ball with Max, how we want to do it. But I feel really good trying to play all 3 of those guys. They all kind of bring something different. The one thing I love about all 3 of them is that they play really hard. So they're never the type of kids that's going to go in there and not play hard and play physical. So I think we just got to keep them fresh, because if they can be fresh with the way we play with tempo, as much 11 personnel that we play, with 3 receivers and a tight end on the field, if we can keep those tight ends fresh, we can even do more stuff. Because they're not getting wore down. So I'm excited about that group, and hopefully we play consistent football there.
Good.
Thanks,
All right.
Gabe.